Alrighty, just a quick update. It's been a while. I think most everyone's familiar, but in case you're not, the compression dictionary transports a way to negotiate using HTTP responses as a compression dictionary for gzip and broadly for other requests that get made either in the future or for dynamic content, static content, that kind of thing. The main trigger is setting a use as dictionary response header on a resource with a match pattern for future requests that it should match. Most of these things should look very similar to the last time, but there are slight tweaks that we'll get into in like the next slide, which has, I think, the differences. And you can also trigger the fetch of a standalone dictionary, mostly for the dynamic use case, where if you want a dictionary for like your HTML, you can say, hey, go fetch this dictionary when you have some idle time using a link rel equals dictionary tag. Interesting use case for that. Even in the static case, we have one partner who is using a custom built dictionary for their site-wide JavaScript. Where they basically just built a dictionary across all of the JavaScript that they publish. And they're seeing pretty good savings on when the individual JavaScript resources get fetched using sort of the site-wide dictionary, which is kind of a spin between the dynamic and static cases. Then the browser, when it has a match for an available dictionary on a request, it'll advertise available dictionary with the hash, and the accept encoding for the resource types. And then if the server agrees and has the resource with the matching dictionary, it will respond that the dictionary was used in a content dictionary response header, as well as the content encoding. And for the most part, the browser just treats it as a normal response at that point. It's just a lot smaller, hopefully. What's new? Chrome 123, currently in beta, has a new origin trial. The origin trial for the compression dictionaries as they were ended in 122, which is the current stable. There's a new trial that is almost ready. So if you go to the origin trial dashboard, you won't quite see it yet. Hopefully in the next day or two, there will be a compression dictionary transport v2 trial. You need new tokens, mostly because the spec changed slightly, so it's not quite compatible, and we wanted to break the tokens just so people intentionally shifted to the new spec. There's a draft 3 of the IETF internet draft, which has all of the current changes and is being discussed at IETF later in March. Hopefully, I think we're done with most of the bike shedding, so it should be minor tweaks at this point going forward. There are open issues for WebPerfWG for integrating with HTML for the link rel equals dictionary or some other mechanism for triggering the fetch, as well as the fetch integration. And the plan is to either open PRs directly on the specs themselves or monkey patch our from our repository over, although we need to end up as PRs to the spec eventually, so I may just go that route. So the changes, the highlights. Originally, we had the header from the client to the server as sec available dictionary. It is now just available dictionary, no sec on the front of it. The content encoding for shared broadly is now br-d, broadly with dictionary, to match Z standards zstd-d instead of SBR. When the server uses a content compression dictionary for compressing a resource, now it has to actually add the header content dictionary and then the hash of the dictionary that was used in the response, as well as the encoding. Previously, the content encoding just implied that the dictionary from the request headers was used. This is a little more atomic, and the response can be completely self-contained when you're trying to decode it without having to look at the request headers to figure out what dictionary was used. The controversial one that will be coming up in the discussion points, the dictionary hashes, both in available dictionary and in the content dictionary, used to be a hex string. It is now a structured field byte stream, which is basically colons to delimit the start and the end, and a base 64 encoded string of the hash instead of a hex string. The TTL was removed from the uses dictionary response header. Dictionaries used to have their own lifetime independent of the response cache lifetime. It was removed in favor of just using the response time, the cache lifetime of the response, plus any stale while revalidate time. So anytime the browser could, in theory, use the resource, it is also available as a dictionary. Match, it used to be its own wildcard expression thing. It is now an official URL pattern, although it still needs to be same origin as the resource that's being used as the dictionary. Match dest is now added to the uses dictionary response header, where you can have dictionaries match certain request destinations. It's a list, so you can have it match document and frame, for example, if you just want HTML resources to be using a dictionary. Makes it easier than just using the wildcard URL pattern. If you have like a site-wide HTML dictionary you want to use, and you don't want it being sent for all of your images and scripts and things like that. There is also now an ID on the uses dictionary response that's opaque to the client. It's just a string, whatever you put in there, up to 1K, I believe, gets echoed back in future requests as dictionary ID in the request header. So if you index the resources by compression dictionary other than using the hash, you can use your own ID for identifying the dictionary that was used for the resources. Those are the changes. Sort of the open questions and things I expect we'll want to discuss. I'm a little sad in the move from hex strings to base 64 encoded hashes, mostly because the hex strings were what the command line tools for hashing spit out, and so it made it really easy to map from request header to file system if you just appended the hex of the hash to the resource names for the dictionary. That said, you generally want to do some processing to the request header anyway to make sure you're not just blindly copying user supplied header into a path of something that you're fetching from the file system, and to make sure it's a valid dictionary and all of that kind of stuff. So maybe I'm overblowing the developer experience benefits, maybe not. The other one that has sort of been itching at the back of my head is if there's any benefit to changing match to be a list of patterns rather than just a single string. The main use case that comes to mind for that is if you want to have it match, if you have a standalone dictionary that you want to match a set of resources, but also be used for itself. Like if version 2 of the dictionary comes out, you'd like to use version 1 as a compression dictionary for version 2. The dictionary itself might be on a different path than the resources that it normally applies to, which feels like an easy case for wanting multiple match patterns, but I don't know if it's adding complexity unnecessarily. I think, yep, that was it for the presentation. If you wanted to stop recording.